What if I told you that setting boundaries is not always the solution? I've spoken before about setting boundaries and why it's crucial. It's crucial as a way for you to regulate your emotions, but also for you to assert your true self and protect your energy. But there are some situations where boundaries simply are not effective. And this can really depend. It can depend on who you're dealing with. It can depend on the situation or the context, where you may want to get a message across, or there may be things you want to avoid, but boundary setting is not the right way to go about it. So in this video, I'm going to help to uncover what those situations might be and what possible alternative strategies you have to setting boundaries. Before we get into it, I'm Desh, I'm a qualified counsellor, and what I do as part of my work is to support my clients with setting boundaries, with enhancing their self-awareness, and with understanding how they can get their point across and how they can be more assertive without coming across as aggressive or hostile. And one of the key ways you can do that is by setting boundaries. Boundaries are there to preserve your energy. They are there for you to not engage in conversations that are going to drain you, to not spend your energy trying to convince someone to do something or to say something or not say something. The whole point of boundaries is they are rules. They are parameters that I'm willing for us to talk about this, this, and this. I'm not going to talk about that or that. Or it could be in terms of what you're willing to do around the house or in your relationship. Look, I'm happy to get involved in this, but I can't do those things because simply I just don't feel interested in it, or I just don't feel it serves me in any way. So boundaries are a very good way for us to communicate to other people around us what we are willing to do and what we are not willing to do. Boundaries can be perceived as you being selfish, and on the surface it seems that way, but actually the intention of boundaries is not to be selfish at all. Okay, I'm going to set my boundary, I'm going to say I'm going to do this and this, and I'm not going to do that. So it seems on the surface to be a very selfish thing to do, but it's actually not, because the point of boundaries is to preserve your energy. When you conserve your energy and protect your energy, you have more of that energy to invest in yourself, and that will naturally transform to better quality relationships, deeper connections, and a more fulfilled and genuine exchange between whoever you're setting the boundary with. It's not to distance yourself, although on the surface it seems that way. It's actually to enhance and enrich a deeper relationship with that person. That's the point of boundaries. If you set boundaries with someone who either is unwilling to respect them, or for whatever reason may not understand what boundaries are about, perhaps it's cultural. In some cultures you just don't set boundaries, especially with your elders in the family, because they interpret it as disrespect. Like, you are now telling me what you are not willing to do. You're not willing to listen to me about these things that I want to talk to you about. It's going to be interpreted as disrespect. So there are going to be some cultural situations and familial situations where setting boundaries is not appropriate. That person will not receive your boundary in the manner in which you intend it. So what's going to happen? You set the boundary and it's going to be completely misinterpreted and distorted into an attack. They may perceive it as an attack, they become defensive, that defensive energy comes back to you, and then you're left dealing with it. Not only have they not understood your boundary or respected it, they're now coming in a defensive state which you are now having to respond to and try to manage. So this is actually making you more drained, it's consuming more of your energy. So there are alternative strategies that you can use to setting boundaries. First of all, you may need to confront that person. You may need to explain very clearly how you are changing or what things you're no longer willing to tolerate. You may, if you want, expand into the reasons why, although you're not obliged to. You may, if you think it's going to help, explain why you're going to do this. But if you feel the person is not open-minded or not using empathy or is not being receptive at all, another strategy would be to avoid them, or perhaps avoid having certain conversations with them, maybe avoid contact with them if possible. Now, this is not always easy because you may be dealing with someone who you're seeing on a regular basis and they're not respecting your boundary. So then what you do is you enhance the boundary even further. So for example, you may say to someone that you don't want to talk about a particular topic, for whatever reason, maybe intentionally or unintentionally, they don't understand what you're saying and they keep bringing that topic with you again and again, you're feeling more and more triggered, not only because they're bringing that topic up, but because they're not listening to you, they're not respecting your boundary. You're now feeling disrespected. So you scale up the boundary to say, look, if you bring this up, that's your choice, but don't expect a response. So now you are upping the game. So instead of just saying, okay, I'm not going to talk about this with you, you're now saying, now if you bring this up, I'm not going to respond. And if they continue to bring it up, you're not feeding them that energy. And even it may even get to the point where you're going to start putting in physical boundaries to say, look, if you bring this topic up again, I'm going to have to remove myself for however long. I cannot be around this topic. I cannot be around this conversation. It doesn't have to be a conversation. It could be anything. But the point of a boundary is you scale it to the point where you feel it's going to benefit you and work for you. And that depends largely on your environment and who you are talking to or talking with. And there's certain environments, such as at work with your boss, where you have a very demanding boss, and it's not that straightforward for you just to set a boundary with them. In some cases it works, and I know with some people it has worked. However, you may feel it's too risky a move and may jeopardize your job. So then you need to look at what other strategies there are for you to help preserve your energy, minimize triggers if boundaries are not this clear solution. Your well-being is the priority. And the reason it's the priority is because the way you feel emotionally will impact your life, because it's going to impact the relationships in your life. It's going to impact how you relate to others, how they treat you in return, and it's going to impact your overall ability just to be confident in yourself, to assert yourself. And if you're in a space where you feel really not confident, uncertain about how you can communicate what you need, is going to result in very uncertain, potentially unstable relationships. The other person you're dealing with is not aware of how you're feeling. They don't know where you're coming from. Whereas if you set boundaries with those that you can, to say, this is what I'm willing to tolerate, this is what I'm not. If you're in a supportive, loving relationship, then that should be well received and it should be respected, just as you would respect another person's boundary. But in those other relationships, potentially it's at work or maybe with some difficult family members, where you feel the boundary is not being respected, then you need to look at scaling up the boundary, or whether you can avoid that relationship or those situations altogether. In another video, I'm going to be talking about reviewing friendships and some of the questions you need to ask yourself to determine whether it's time to end that friendship or relationship once and for all. So the key takeaway I want you to get from this video is that boundaries are about saving your energy. You do not set boundaries for the sake of setting boundaries or to show everyone, hey, I'm able to regulate my emotions or communicate, here's my boundary. The whole point of a boundary is it's got to be purposeful and intentional. What is the purpose of setting the boundary? It's to preserve your energy or to avoid getting into a situation that's going to be draining of you. So you're saying, I'm willing to go up to these things or do these things, but if the conversation or the activity or whatever it is involves these items, I'm not interested, I'm not going to get involved, because in the past it's just really been detrimental to me. And you can choose how much you're willing to share in terms of the impact it's having on you. Perhaps with someone who you're quite close with, you may want to be quite specific in terms of the impact that those things have had on you in the past and why you're setting those boundaries with them. This can help the other person to understand where you're coming from. But it might be in a more professional context where you're working with a colleague that you don't have a good relationship with and you've had conflicts with before. Maybe you need to set some more professional boundaries with them, but maybe you don't want to divulge as much information as to how it's impacted you. So you keep that a bit more distant. So it depends on the situation you're in, but boundaries are about saving energy, preserving your energy. That's the bottom line. Comment below on your experience of using boundaries, either when they have been helpful or when they have not been helpful. I'd be really curious to find out about it. I think this is an important topic that we delve into because it can help us in situations where boundaries simply are not going to be effective. Please like and subscribe. There's going to be more content coming out very soon.